Hi, this is DaleFranks, and welcome back to QandO TV. This week, rather than talk about politics a whole bunch, I thought I would talk about technology and point out the devices or software that really has changed our lives over the last 10 years. Let's start off with something that everybody uses almost every day, something called Google. You know, it's kind of hard to believe, but 5 years ago, well, there was no Google. Nobody had even heard of it. Google was just some sort of odd word that didn't have any specific meaning in the English language. Now we know exactly what Google is. When we talk about Googling someone or somebody, we know exactly what we're doing. Google has become sort of the central website of our web experience now anytime we need to learn anything. And we can learn almost anything from using Google. Well, I'm not sure that we learn stuff, but we can certainly find things that relate to what we're searching for. Whether we learn anything from reading it or whether what we're reading is even true, well, that's still a problem that needs to be addressed. Other than that, though, Google has become, in the space of 5 years, a company that has become one of the largest companies in the world, having grown up from practically nothing. And it has given us the ability to find massive amounts of information that were almost entirely inaccessible to us 10 years ago. 20 years ago, you would have had to go to your public library and had one of the reference librarians undergo a tedious search, taking hours and hours and hours to try to find the references that just mentioned the things you wanted to learn about. Now, with Google, in a matter of seconds, you can find almost any information you want pretty much immediately. Another thing that's happened over the past 10 years that is really changing the face of the entire recording industry has been the creation of the iPod. The iPod itself is a pretty simple device, plays music and maybe a little video. And when it first came out, it didn't even do the video bit, it just played music. But it really has had an extraordinary effect on the recording industry and on the way artists have to reach the public. Again, 10, 15 years ago, certainly prior to the creation of Napster, if you were an artist, if you wanted to get your music out to the public, in any sort of large-scale fashion anyway, I mean, you could always go and play a club, I suppose, but if you really wanted to have your albums available to the public, heck, if you wanted to make an album, you pretty much needed to have a record company on your side. You had to sign a contract. They'd pay for your studio time because studio time was horrifically expensive, and in a major studio still is, and then they would produce and distribute your album. Well, now you aren't really that dependent as an artist on what a record company wants to do. In fact, if you've got $150 that you can lay down for a little Alesis Multimix USB mixer, and you've got a computer, then you can download Audacity, a sound recording software, free off the web, and you've got a multi-track recording studio right there in your computer. You can record anything that you want, transfer it over to MP3, and put it out on a website. People can download it for their iPod. Heck, you can put it on iTunes now, and iTunes will take it and put it up on the internet for you, put it in the iTunes store, and anyone in the world can download your songs. What this means, of course, is that the record industry is no longer the gatekeeper for artistic talent. Now you have the ability to go out and create your own buzz and create your own fan base without ever having to go to a record industry at all. Naturally, this has not made the record companies happy. They know they're in a dying industry. Surely they must know it. And they also know that there's not much that they can do about it except to find people who download copyrighted music and to ask them for $500,000 as a penalty. That's not a long-term strategy for success. So what does the future bring us? Well, this week there was a fascinating paper written by some IBM guys as well as some academics in Japan. They have created what are the very first molycircs. Aha, what, you ask, is a molycirc? It is a single molecule of benzene, which is suspended between two extremely tiny gold contacts. And they can turn that benzene molecule on and off just like a transistor. In other words, we can now have integrated circuits with each switch being only one molecule in size. That is an order of difference in size reduction over what we have now. Imagine a Cray X series supercomputer in a box about that big. That's what Moly circuitry gives you. Now, it's not something we'll see in the next year or two or maybe even 5, but in 10 years we may see an entire new range of extremely tiny devices which have more computing power than most of us have ever dealt with in our lives. The pace of technology over the past 10 years has really been amazing. The expansion in the availability of technology at very cheap prices that almost anyone can afford. I mean, think about it. Who do you know that doesn't have an iPod? Has been amazing. Well, that ramp up in technology, the decreases in size, the increases in processing power, the availability of information that'll be easily accessible to all of us will only increase by another order of magnitude over the next decade or so. You know, when you read science fiction, they talk about wearable computers and artificial intelligences. Well, a couple of years, it may not be science fiction. It'll just be the way we live. I'm DaleFranks. Thanks for watching QandO TV. We'll talk to you again soon. So long.